But now that China is coming out of their lockdowns,
Let's back it up here.
this has really helped Europe sustain through 2022 and into 2023. But now that China is coming out of their lockdowns, the need for energy from China is going to be extreme. They are really going to start to bid for all of those LNG cargoes that have been going to Europe. So the impact of that is going to be we either get more LNG to Europe somehow, or the price in Europe is going to increase substantially, and it could have a major impact on industries and also just people's lives in general.
Are people being impacted already, and what kind of impacts do you see coming?
The impact really in Europe has been the price paid for natural gas. At one point, it reached over $60 US for an energy unit. But thanks to the mild winter, and it's like I said, the flood of LNG from the US and the Middle East, Europe's gas supplies were pretty well handled. In other words, the industries and whatnot could still function, people could still heat their homes. But this could change radically, like I said, with the recovery of China, and if next year is a colder winter.
Well, the green push, we see this all over the place. We see it all over the place in America. Is it affecting negatively Europe? It sure looks like it is.
No, it really has for a long time. MCF Energy supports the transition to a lower carbon world. We also recognize that this transition is going to take decades to achieve. The switching from burning coal to a much cleaner natural gas has contributed to major reductions in carbon emissions in the United States. And Germany has currently 63 coal-fired power plants and it of course just shut down their last nuclear reactor. So more natural gas is going to be required, and as more natural gas becomes available, we will switch from these dirty coal-fired power plants to much cleaner burning natural gas plants and significantly reduce the carbon output. MCF really hopes that we can be a major supplier of natural gas to this effort.
Okay, so why would they take so many steps that are obviously harmful to their own people's interests? I mean, any nation wants their people to have a nice supply of cheap power, and they have the resources there. Why would they hurt their own people?
It's kind of short-sightedness. The influx of cheap Russian gas and the rise of the ESG movement in Europe's domestic energy sector has really been decimated. Easy access to natural gas from Russia has really allowed the Green Party to believe that it was easy for them to ignore the resources within their own borders and push for the goal of total green energy. However, as we found out, this transition is going to be slow, and the conversion timescale that these people want is just totally unreasonable. It's just not achievable. The EU has finally recognized this, and natural gas will form a bridge to the renewable energy resources, and the EU has declared natural gas green and critical to the goal of a carbon-free world. So this has been a major change in the viewpoint of the local and regional governments in the area.
Why would Europe rely so much on Russian gas? Do they have none of their own?
Europe has always had oil and gas resources. The problem has been the availability of gas from Russia. Russia really has manipulated the price and the supply to their own benefit for decades. And this has allowed the Europeans to, I call it being drunk on Russian gas. They really have ignored their own resources, and it's really defunded all exploration in Europe. And because of this, there's a large number of good quality prospects in Europe, which have gone ignored, that MCF Energy is now trying to bring together and develop.
Any success there?
Yes, as a matter of fact, we reviewed over 20 different projects and have selected two, one in Austria, an area that is in the Austrian Alps, and the second one is a project in Germany, which is an undeveloped discovery gas field that we have great hopes for. Both are significant in size and should have impact once we bring them online.
Jim, wishing you the best of luck, man. Go get them.
Yeah, we're after it, believe me.
We need the gas. Thank you, sir. All right. It's a lot, right? We're on it. We'll do it again sometime.
The Global Energy War, brought to you by MCF Energy, securing Europe's energy independence. The Anti-Communist Manifesto.
I wish I would have got more of that. Sorry about that. What we're fixing to watch right now is just as interesting, pertaining to Russia and this movement that is ongoing, pertaining to people that is
impact on saving America. Your gift will help us continue to bring truth to
people that is dead set in some form or fashion in bringing their enterprises over here to America and basically buying us out little by little, slowly by slowly, to the point of communism taking control of our democracy. This show that you're fixing to watch, I think that you will find just as interesting as what you just got through hearing about energy supplies. And I've always known that, regardless whether it was from Chesapeake, Devon, Halliburton, or whoever out there, that I've always known that to do the transformation, like that individual said, is going to take probably a decade or even more before we fully make the transformation. I personally believe that we have gone too far to reverse the damage that's already been done. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't try to at least counter-react the damages that we've already done, that we've already did. We should do that immediately. I mean, immediately. If that nation is not engaged in this, they should be. But what I'm saying is, as far as us stopping it completely, we're going to continue to see F4, F5 hurricanes, possibly even F6 hurricanes in the future. We're going to see more outbreak of tornadoes here in the Western world. We're going to see more droughts. We're going to see more extreme weather phenomenons as far as the forces of nature wreaking havoc upon humanity, because the Bible talks about these things occurring. It says that in the last day Satan will come down in great wrath, because it knoweth its time is short. If somebody destroys your neighborhood, if somebody destroys your life, if somebody destroys your home, that's not a friend that has done this. That is an adversary that has done this. Well, we have brought this adversary into our own lives by not paying attention to what we was doing to our planet. And because of the wicked sin and because of our lifestyles down here, we're basically on our own. We're kind of like the position that I was in 2 weeks ago, this past Sunday. After fishing for about 3.5 hours, we brought on board a couple that the lady friend weighed over 400 pounds, and the man, her husband, weighed over 400 pounds. By the time you add the cooler and all the fishing, tackle, and etc., you're basically looking at 1,000 pounds added to the pontoon boat, because the pontoon boat was over in a rigorous churned water area, and because of so many boats being out on the water holiday Memorial weekend, it basically created a whirlpool to the point that the boat started going down, because the elements was just right. So because of it, I had to bail to equalize the load so that the boat would calm back down on the opposite side. But in me jumping, my life preserver got caught on the fishing pole holder, and nobody was smart enough to throw it to me after they realized that I was in trouble. What you're fixing to see is basically the same thing, because at that point in time I was on my own. There wasn't no life preserver. There wasn't no professional swimmer. I was on my own. And you talk about a dreary, dreaded feeling of knowing that you're struggling and you're struggling and you're struggling, and every ounce of energy has already done left your body, to the point that now your body is beginning to clam up because of the water being so cold, and you basically injecting all your energy at one time. And basically I knew that I was fixing to die. And if it wasn't for God intervening towards bringing another boat to my rescue, I would have died. I would have died. So in actuality, I wasn't on my own. But that's my point. It reached the point that I personally thought that nothing but doom and gloom and despair, death, was within a breath's taking away of my very life. And that's basically where we are right now as an Americans. And I believe after you get through watching this particular show, as harshly and as incredibly as it may sound towards you watching this, I believe that you'll be able to come to the same conclusion that I did, not only with the oil and gas, towards it going to take basically decades to change it around because of the damages that we've already done to our planet. Not only the upper atmosphere, but down below our feet, pertaining to dismantling the ecosystem below our feet, because the oil was not put there for us to drain out. The oil was put there for a reason, and that reason, I believe, was to eliminate the friction. Plus, it was put there as a shield to eliminate the core of the heat of the core of the center of the earth, of expanding to the outside of the earth, that now is resonating in areas all over the planet, pertaining to massive volcanoes that has increased 300+% just within the past few years. That these volcanoes are basically release valves, indicating that planet Earth is in trouble. And if we didn't have those release valves that was releasing the pressure up underneath our feet, the planet would basically just explode. It would either explode or implode. I personally believe that it would explode, because I personally believe that all the fire that had been fed for thousands and thousands of years that are in the center of the mantle is spinning faster and faster, because it's got less oil to feed off of, and it realizes that if it don't continue to stay afire, which is basically the very thing that keeps this earth moving in a direction that it's moving in towards our cycle, our 24-hour cycle. I mean, there's more to the center of the earth other than just the poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. Scientists don't believe that. I do. I believe that if the center of the earth was to ever stop churning, that so would also the outside of the earth. And basically, whatever side that you was on, if you was on the sunny side, you would have sunny side 24 hours a day. If you was on the opposite side pertaining to darkness, you would have darkness 24/7. And it wouldn't just be that way every 6 months, but it would be that way inevitably from now on out. Now you may be saying, what gives you that ideal, biblically speaking? Well, if you'll read the Bible, in Revelations, it talks about the angels of God that will have the ability to basically stop the planet Earth during the time whenever God brings great judgment upon humanity during the 1,000-year millennium. Actually, the beginning phases of it begins of the first part of the 7-year tribulation period, where the false prophet will come forth that will be deceiving and telling people nothing but lies, that the majority of people will basically flog to. I guess that's a good word, flogging. The people will flog to this particular individual. I don't know if it's going to be a male, maybe a female. But then within 3.5 years, during the time that the world has been turned upside down on its axis, whenever all hell has busted loose because the angels of God comes forth to gather together the elect from the four corners of the earth, but by doing so also burns down every person's house or residency upon to the planet, where the Bible says, hurt not the oil, hurt not the trees, because it's not yet time for those things to be destroyed, but during which time the actual Antichrist will rise out of the ashes, that would dictate to people that if they do not take the new mark of the beast, the world order, that they will either physically have to die a slow, miserable death of hunger, or they will have to be beheaded during this time. And I recognize that the information that I'm giving you right now is not a glorious thing to think about. But once more, I didn't write the book of Revelations. I didn't write the Bible in general pertaining to end-time biblical Bible prophecies pertaining to Armageddon, the apocalypse. All I am is the messenger to the apocalypse. I had people here in Northwest Tennessee beginning in 1989, whenever I had the apocalypse model made and put it in the back of my truck. I had people that actually was thinking that if they could stop me, they was going to stop the apocalypse. If we can stop this individual and get him off the radio station and basically give him an ultimatum towards either losing his job or stopping his message, that for surely to God he'll stop his message versus losing his job. Well, I went ahead and lost my job, and I continued with my message. Though my message was sacrificial pertaining to all these churches and all these people that turned against me the way that they did, because they was dead set that they didn't want to support a ministry that supported true peace upon to the earth pertaining to the apocalypse model. Once more, these are the very things that has put us where we are to this day, including the events that's going on right now, with a prior president that within the next 48 hours, the way that I understand it, is going to be arraigned with warrants served upon to him that could possibly cost him his liberty. I'm not saying that it's justifiable. I'm not saying that it's not justifiable. What I am saying is that people need to wait, and they need to give the system time to do whatever the system is going to do before they make a rational decision of either accepting their decision or going up against their decision. Hopefully those that go up against the decision will not go up against their decision in a violent, hostile way to the degree of what we've seen January the 6th. But if it does lead to that, I say this with remorse in my throat and remorse in my heart, that it couldn't have happened to a better group of people pertaining to those that actually thought that they was going to be able to stop biblical Bible prophecy beginning right here in Northwest Tennessee. I don't have to mention names. Obion County and Weakley County will be good enough towards what formigated this type of movement that's going on right now pertaining to Donald J. Trump. But whenever you get through watching and listening to this particular show that you're fixing to see, providing that you're watching it, I think you will be able to identify real quick that the world, my friends, is in trouble. It's in more serious trouble than what we can ever begin to imagine. And don't think that the American people are exempt from this trouble, because it's sneaking in every avenue, in every alleyway. It is coming into people's lives either directly or indirectly through either one group or another. Don't think that we're not hitting right now, presently, as I speak, year 2023, that we're not heading for a calamity such as the United States of America has never ever seen before. And that includes the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, the Spanish War, World War I, World War II, the Vietnam War, the Korean War, Desert Storm War, Freedom Desert Storm War, and the Afghanistan War, all combined together. All combined together. I'm going to say it one more time. All combined together. That will be worser coming near a neighborhood near you. Now, this is the founder of the Windmill Ministry speaking to you right now, trying to get my message across that I have spent endless, not hours, but days, weeks, producing material, just as what I'm producing right now, to try to awaken my fellow man. And instead of getting awakened, I'm still getting badgered, slapped down. I'm still being treated as the enemy, though I'm the one that's trying to save not only America, but save the world. So please listen to this particular program. I believe that you will find it to be very, very interesting. Please watch.
That are teaching our young people dangerous anti-American ideologies. Equip us to reach millions of people with our daily shows, and support our newly launched Turning Point Academy that is unapologetically educating the next generation with truth.
We can't do this important work without the support of friends like you. Join us today with your gift of any amount and help us take back our country before it's too late.
The Anti-Communist Manifesto is available for all. You can order it online. It's at all your bookstores. It's selling like wildfire, so thank you for that. So let's discuss something real quick. By the way, jessekellybook.com is where you can order it online. It's where you can find out about the book tour. It's where you can get your AC pin, your anti-communist pin. We're beginning an anti-communist community. You do all that at jessekellybook.com, but let's discuss something real quick. Anti-communism, anti-communist. Why do we talk about that? What's the point of all that? One, let's focus on what communism is first. Remember this, and I talk about this extensively in the book. Communism is not what the dictionary definition is. It's not about the workers or this. It's nothing to do with any of that at all. That's why communism has taken on a different form every country where it's been. For China's communism, did you know it looked radically different than the communism in the Soviet Union? So it started in the Soviet Union, and again, I talked about this, where the urban poor were really malcontented. They were really unhappy for many valid reasons. The communists, as they were whipping up the revolution in the Soviet Union, they focused on the urban poor because the urban poor were the malcontents in the society, and you can use people's bitterness to destroy things you want destroyed and to give yourself power. So boom, Soviet Union, urban poor. China starts picking up on this communism thing, starts really catching on in certain circles there. And they're working with the Soviet Union, Lenin and Stalin, these guys. So they're working with guys like Mao in China. And Mao starts to have some conflicts with the Soviet communists. Why? Because the Soviet communists were telling Mao, hey, focus on the urban poor. You gotta focus on those urban poor. And Mao said, what? No, you don't understand China. We don't have mass amounts of malcontented urban poor here. Our rural poor, those are the malcontents. So that's where we need to go. So the communists in China found a different group of malcontents. Cambodia looked totally different than all the rest of them. America, and most of the West, this isn't unique to America, it looks radically different here than it did there. Why? Because we have different malcontents. And the communists in the 60s and 70s, they actually wrote this down that they needed to make a shift from all this worker stuff. It was not catching on in the West to their frustration. They had to make a shift. So where do you shift? Well, you just find people's malcontents. What are the fingers of America's communist fist? What are they really? And these are all laid out in the book in the historical context of them. What are the fingers of the fist? The climate change nutters, the feminists, the, quote, civil rights, Black Lives Matter types, of course, the LGBTQ. These are all fingers of America's communist fist. What do they all have in common? These were the malcontents in our society. The communism is nothing more than a religion that's the search for any society's malcontents. You search for them, you find them, you use their bitterness to burn society down. That's all communism is. 100 years from now, it'll look totally different than it does here today. So why anti-communism? There's 1,000 of these books, right? Everybody writes a book now of conservatism and libertarianism and nationalism and neoconservative. Why anti-communism? What is the point of that? What am I saying? Well, what I'm saying is we're up against a religion of death and destruction. It is a death cult. And unless they are stopped, nothing else matters. Nothing else matters. And to be honest, I find many of these squabbles on the various factions on the right, I find them to be laughable. Not because they're not important arguments to have, but because these are pointless arguments to have while the communist has taken over every single institution. These squabbles people have on the right, it's you and I arguing over which color we want to paint the walls while a murderous gang of thugs is kicking down the front door to murder both of us. Why are we arguing about the wall paint? They must be stopped first. Once they are stopped, then we can come back and we can have a knockdown drag out about the wall paint. But until they are stopped, nothing else matters. Anti-communism is all that matters. Why do I speak like that? Well, because I understand history. And you'll read about this in the Anti-Communist Manifesto. Things like 1.7 million dead in Lenin's concentration camps. You know them as gulags. 18 million of those were slave labor camps. Oh, and did I mention, it wasn't just a bunch of murderers and rapists in those camps. It was political prisoners. Can you imagine living in a country where the political party in charge would block up its political opponents? January 6th, Trump. Could you imagine living in a country like that? Did you know that Joseph Stalin, that he starved millions of people to death in Ukraine? It's known as the Holodomor. You can read about that in the book as well. How many millions of people? Oh, I don't know. Might be 2 million. Might be 10 million. Nobody knows. Why? Because they starved to death in their beds. Families drawing straws to see which family member they would kill and eat that day. That's not something out of the movies. That's what communists have done. Dogs roaming the streets with an arm in their mouth from a hastily buried body. Nobody knows how many the communists killed in Ukraine because all the mass graves covered it up. It was such a disaster, the numbers can never and will never be known. Did you know that Mao's CCP, they outlawed private farming? They decided these small businesses needed to be a thing of the past. Instead, we're going to do a gigantic fishing. We're going to nationalize the farming industry. All of you gather together on this communal farm. Except when everyone gathered together on the communal farm, they weren't producing. Not everybody was. I mean, sure, the young, strong men were, but gosh, these pregnant women and the kids and the old people, they're kind of a burden. Hey, let's just kill them or let them starve to death. I won't even go into the details of what they did at Pest prison. I won't even tell you about Cambodia. You can learn about that in the Anti-Communist Manifesto, where they had 15-year-olds beating people to death by the million. 25% of Cambodia's population gone in 4 years. Why do I discuss anti-communism so passionately? Why am I an anti-communist, not a conservative or anything else these people call? Because I understand nothing else matters. Nothing. Unless these people are defeated. What is coming for America, very, very quickly, is more horrific than you have ever seen a movie about, more horrific than you can imagine, unless these people are stopped. That's why I write chapter after chapter after chapter after chapter about various parts of American communism. From corporate communism, I write about education system in this country. I write about the LGBTQ mob. Don't think the Black Lives Matter civil rights hustlers got out. Antifa. Did you know that Antifa, today's Antifa, do you know they draw a direct connection between the communist Antifa that was taking place in Weimar, Germany before World War II? And did you know in Weimar, Germany before World War II, they called themselves Antifa? These are the kind of tidbits that are here in the book. We will talk about cultural destruction in the book. It's chapter 2, by the way, if you want a little preview. Cultural destruction. Why do they rename military bases? Is it because they're really passionate about slavery? They're very protective of black people. Just passionate about human rights. Is that why they remake your street names, remake your military bases, tear down monuments? I got news for you. That has nothing to do with it whatsoever. You see, the communist destroys your monuments, your history, because the communist is out to destroy you. If you want to hear all this laid out in detail, not only the history of it, all kinds of history, where we're at today, how to fight back against it, go to jessekelleybook.com and purchase the Anti-Communist Manifesto today. You're not stuck in your timeshare. You think you're stuck in your timeshare because these timeshare companies are dirty liars, but you're not stuck. And I understand how it goes. You get talked into it, or maybe it was a good presentation. Maybe you have enjoyed your timeshare, and I hope you have enjoyed your timeshare, and you end up signing on the dotted line. You go down to the beach for a few years, life is good. Eventually the kids move away, grow up. You don't use it anymore, you're tired of it, whatever the case may be. You think you can get out, but they tell you, no, sorry, you signed the contract. You should have read the fine print on page 89, paragraph B. Lone Star Transfer caught onto this scam for a long time ago. They've helped 18,000 homeowners legally and permanently get out of their timeshare. They guarantee it in writing. Family business. You're one phone call away from getting out. Call 844-310-2646. 844-310-2646, or go to LoneStarTransfer.com.
Are you tired of watching your beloved nation fall prey to the insidious grip of communism? The Anti-Communist Manifesto by Jesse Kelly is the ultimate guide to fighting back against this destructive force. Discover the shocking truth about communism infiltrating our education system, corporations, and even environmental movements. Unmask the true agenda behind groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and learn how to protect the United States from the most malicious enemy. With extensive documentation of past atrocities, you'll see the undeniable danger posed by this ideology. Arm yourself with knowledge and join.
Now, this particular fight that he's talking about in promoting this book, which is fine with me, but I don't want to be misleading to my viewers in letting you know that this is not something that just come up yesterday or the day before yesterday. This is the very thing that our ancestors was fighting against 75 plus years ago of this same movement. They actually brought this movement over to America in the 20s towards trying to gain sympathizers with the Aryan hood pertaining to communism over here. And then Germany, the war broke out, and of course we got involved after Pearl Harbor, and then we had to end it the way that we ended it, because if we didn't end it the way that we ended it, me and you right now would probably be speaking German, and instead of greeting and talking about our politicians the way that we do here in America, we would probably be suffering immensely and possibly even put to death because of not having the freedom of speech, of speaking out against various political groups. In other words, the damages that I've went through, in which don't think for a second that the founder hasn't went through great apparel, indicating humongous apparel just within the past 30 plus years since I've stood out or stood up in the eyes of the general public, in which I have. But if I would have been in any of these other countries, I would not be sitting here right now talking to you. They would have already eliminated me. I would have already be dead. And if they don't poison you to death, they'll just go ahead and just throw you off of a building or assassinate you. It don't matter. Because this is that evil, demonic, cruel gene that is still to this day trying to dominate the world, as well as another cruel, evil, demonic gene that the Bible talks about pertaining to Magog, indicating the old Persian Empire over in the Middle East. So between the two, they are still trying to dominate the planet at the expense of destroying the Christians. And it doesn't matter if it's American Christians, Mexican Christians, Canadian Christians. It doesn't matter if it's European Christians. It don't matter if it's Jerusalem, Israel Christians. It don't matter. They do not like godly people that has a godly message. And because of it, this is the reason why we have seen just within the past few years here in America, the anti-Semitism rise the way that it has, indicating that evil is being released of exercising its authority more so today than what it ever has. So I hope and pray that you'll listen to this message and take it at heart.
Yourself with knowledge and join the fight to preserve the American way of life. The Anti-Communist Manifesto, a new must-read book from Jesse Kelly. Get your copy today at jessekellybook.com or wherever books are sold.
Oh no, you hate coming home.
The times that we're living in right now, we're not supposed to be where we're at, but we're here anyway.
Bad part is you, because you found out that I hate the word literally. And now if you go look at the reviews online, everyone has chosen to use that word reviewing the book. No, they're all 5-star reviews, don't get me wrong, but everybody dogging me with this freaking poisonous word. I can't take it anymore. And maybe the worst culprit out there is my buddy Kay. She writes for Daily Caller about social decline and apocalypse, and she's really, really talented, but she does use the word literally, and when you combine that with the fact that she's currently sitting on an exercise ball, she might be the whitest woman on the face of the planet. Kay, go ahead and try to defend this word, because it can't be defended. It's killing me.
No, it literally can't be defended. Neither can my choice to literally be sitting on an exercise ball, which I do for my back. It's a great life hack. It's cleared all my problems up. I know what it sounds like. I know what I am. But, you know, I literally just, every single day, I just keep going. I love the Anti-Communist Manifesto. It's a fantastic piece of work, Jesse. It's literally one of the best things that I've ever read. And the fact that you hate the word literally so much just makes it even better, because now I get to enjoy both the work that you've done, but also driving you nuts, which is probably my second favorite thing to do in the whole world other than use the word literally.
I can't take it anymore, okay? Between that, the exercise ball. I'm sure the essential oils are probably just off camera.
Now, I do want to weigh in on something else a while ago that the individual was talking about over in Europe pertaining to natural gas, and it's going to take basically generations, decades, before the world finally goes over, transfigurates from where we are now, from where we already should have been. In the process of that, you have to put into the equation of not only the war, not only those that are in control of the market pertaining to oil markets, but as recently, within the past couple of weeks, I believe Russia has just recently blown up a dam that has destroyed thousands and thousands of agriculture crops. It has destroyed, I think the count went down from 500,000 to about 250,000 of people that's been displaced, of their towns flooding, their villages and towns flooding. That in and of itself is going to not only diminish a whole year of agriculture, but possibly even 2 years. In the meantime, that's going to strain all the resources around in that area that was relying upon those same crops, that now are going to make it that much harder and tougher to be able to afford a loaf of bread. And like the individual was talking about, if Europe has a bad winter this coming year, it will basically cause destruction on scales unimaginable, pertaining to people literally freezing to death or starving to death, one or the other, because they won't be able to afford to stay warm and they won't be able to feed themselves. We are at a point right now like we've never seen before. And in the process of this point where we are, we got individuals such as myself that's trying to raise a red flag by telling you how severe that severe is going to get. But if you're continually ignoring us, if you're continually badgering us or humiliating us or degrading us, dehumanizing us the way that you've been doing now for the past 30 plus years, you actually got it coming. You got it coming. In other words, it couldn't have happened to a better group of people towards the destruction that's coming to humanity. Because the Bible is very clear pertaining to the first woe that we're in right now, of these horrors that's going to be falling upon the humanity. We haven't seen nothing yet, my friends, pertaining to a radical weather, forces of nature becoming so extreme that you could not even begin to imagine what's around the corner. And these are being implemented by the demonic, satanic, Luciferian Lucifer, out to kill, steal, and destroy, which is the author of confusion. Please, please, whatever you do, do not take these things lightly. If you have any age on you at all towards the sufferings of what we're going to have to experience if we do not meet these challenges head on, of putting all the equations, all the dots together. Not just part of the truth, but all the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth. Now, obviously, this character right here, he's probably doing this for a money-making scheme, and I don't know, he may make millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars off of this book. And that's probably his concept of ever getting the book in behind, putting it on paper to begin with, is to make money off of it. But in reality, it's not just a book to make money off of. In reality, this is a movement that began, a forceful movement 75 plus years ago, that we're staring down the same barrels today that our ancestors was staring down. And if we're not smart enough to see the storm coming and to prepare for the storm, you know, it's kind of like a boulder that's coming down the mountain, you see a boulder coming down the mountain, you get out of its way. Because you know you can't stop it. So you try to prepare yourself of surviving the forces of the boulder coming down the mountain. You can't stop the boulder. Get out of its way. Get out of its wake. But then after it goes by, then regroup.
But just to complete the white woman picture. Anyway, you do write about the apocalypse. I talk about climate communism in chapter 6. These are my brilliant words, Kay. There's nothing that the true believers won't attribute to climate change. Every single observable phenomenon in nature is now considered that the prophecy is coming to pass. With all climate-related events now blamed on climate change, the environmental religion has found the perfect basis for control. And since everything human beings do expels CO2, they can control everything. Gosh.
See, he's using a concept that in a way is taking it out of perspective, but in another way it's not, because there's actually people right now that's using religion to basically try to use it as a tool towards weaponizing it. That's not the purpose for religion pertaining to the gospel. The whole purpose for the gospel is to prepare us for the inedible and to give us the ability of choosing, or rather not, we want to be destructive in our own personal lives of not only this world but of the world to come, in people not accepting Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior. Once more, this individual right here, I believe his whole concept is over money. And that's fine. If that's what he wants to do, let him write all the books that he wants. But let's discover his motives and his intentions. That way we won't take things out of perspective on our end in understanding just exactly who this individual is and what he's putting this material out here to begin with for. There's no doubt people are going to use this particular moment pertaining to global warming. They're going to use it as a tool, an instrument to make money off of, and they're going to use it as a tool to control people's lives. In other words, they're going to mischaracterize their own motives just to be able to self-sustain their own lives. Their motives will be evil. Only God will be able to determine that ultimately in the end, and those people will be judged according to what that they have done and the purpose for them doing it. In the meantime, global warming is real. Also, this movement that began 75 plus years ago pertaining to the anti-communist manifesto, it's real. You can't deny the things that are real. Proof is in the pudding towards them being real. And you have to make your own decisions on what to do and how to do it.
You think, gosh, that is so witty and brilliant, don't you think, Kay?
No, it's literally fantastic. Brilliant words, all in order. It's superb. But no, to get back to the more sort of like serious point here, you're absolutely spot on, Jesse. I mean, what we've seen in Europe, what I experienced growing up, is a true indoctrination of ignorance in our relationship with the natural world. So for any of your viewers who don't know, part of my degree was in climate change, in the study of climate change. And there's a lot that gets left out from kind of the mainstream headlines and the mainstream rhetoric on this subject matter. For example, there's an entire subfield of study within climate change called uncertainty, because there are so many unknown factors. And while we can look at historical climate and sort of see point blank that we're actually living in a pretty calm time climatologically, like the only real issues that we have with the climate come from our own greed, and that doesn't actually impact sort of like the climate as in the air around us. I'm talking about sort of like things with polluting waterways, the fact that we've got very corrupt organizations who manage most of our natural resources, things like that. And then you can kind of flip to the other side of it, right? We've got this natural relationship with the world, but now we've also got this sort of like mass psychological manipulation that has given so many global governments. I mean, America is really one of the last holdouts, if you can believe it. But pretty much all these different global governments are now taking away freedoms from people like you and I, all under the guise of this thing, climate change, that we don't actually fully understand at all. And actually, the fact that we don't understand it doesn't mean that we can't deal with what the planet is throwing at us. We just choose to adapt in the wrong ways. It's so stupid to me. Literally.
It is, okay. And you know what? This actually brings up a point that I've thought of a lot. Something that bothers me is these people, these anti-human communist pieces of trash, they will cut us off from actually addressing things we want to address. Like you just mentioned, pollution and things like that. I grew up hunting and fishing and hiking and things, and if I see a beer can on the ground out in nature, it just makes my head want to freaking explode. I freaking hate that. I hate the massacring of the environment, which I love, but I can't really talk about that very much because these people have hijacked the whole thing and they think the air I'm breathing out and cow farts are making the world warmer. So they've cut us off from talking about things I would love to be passionate about. Some corporation massacring a mountain, dumping a bunch of stuff in a river, and putting toxins in the ground would cause cancer. These are real things I would love to dig into, but since these climate nutters have hijacked the whole thing with their cult, that you can't even address it.
Well, that's something that I'm really trying to tackle within my career. And you know this very well. When I came out to the States, I was a very liberal, socialist, progressive, and wokeism hadn't really become a thing yet. And as that sort of swept in, I was living out in California. And aside from the humanitarian crisis that is California, when I look at the way that the land is managed there, under sort of so-called Democrats, if you will, I just think they're all part of the global elite at this point, and that's all scum. But when you look at the way they actually manage the resources they have, none of it makes sense. So like, for example, over the last 6 months, we've had some of the highest levels of precipitation in California in the last 100 years, we think. There's no way to really know exactly what it was, but that's a whole other subtopic. I want to make sure that that water resource is managed effectively, that we avoid flash flooding as soon as we start seeing this massive melt. We've already had 2 lakes that disappeared off the face of the earth because of terrible management of California's water supply. They've just come back. I want to make sure that that kind of stuff is managed appropriately, and I want to point fingers at the people that aren't doing it. And when I hear politicians teaching essentially young kids that, yeah, cow farts are the worst thing in the world and we all need to be eating bugs, that's the first place where I turn around and say, well, how about then we teach kids how to actually have that relationship with the planet, to take nothing but photographs, leave nothing but footprints. That's the way that I was raised in your, like, how you're supposed to interact with the natural world.